Whereas Richard Gumber graduated from Lindblom Technical High School. And whereas Richard Gumber served in the United States Army from 1943 to 1945. Whereas Richard Gumber was a crane operator for the American Bridge Company and worked on dozens of noteworthy projects around the Chicago area, among them the John Hancock Center, 333 West Wacker Drive, 3 First National Plaza, Madison Plaza, One Financial Place, and Citigroup Center. And whereas Richard Gumber's work extended beyond buildings, he also worked on the realignment of Lakeshore Drive's famous S-curve in the mid-1990s and on the Columbus Drive and Randolph Street bridges over the Chicago River. And whereas the pinnacle of Richard Gumber's career was his work on the Sears Tower, he manned the crane that brought the final beams to the top of the skyscraper. And whereas Richard Gumber took video and photos of the Sears Tower project and provided those to makers of 2 documentaries on the construction of the Sears Tower. One was an episode of Modern Marvels on the History Channel, which aired in 2004, and the other was If You Build It on the Travel Channel in 2004. Whereas Richard Gumber was a member of Local 150 operating engineers for more than 50 years, and whereas Richard Gumber passed away on December 30th, 2013. Now therefore, I, Sandra Berry, Village President of the Village of Oak Lawn, along with the Board of Trustees, recognize Richard Gumber for his long career as a Local 150 operating engineer and a resident of Oak Lawn for more than 50 years, dated this 28th day of January, 2014.
Not only did Rich build skyscrapers, but Rich, in the very early days of Oak Lawn, built some residential property, including yours, right? So this man was a jack of all trades. Yeah. Did you have something you'd like to say?
No, I just would like to thank everybody for...
Yeah, come on to the microphone.
I'd like to thank everybody for acknowledging him.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you.
If I could, Mayor,
Coming out.
Mayor, if I could, before the family leaves,
Yes.
if I could ask you to come to the podium one more time. I shared this with Trustee Vorderer, but probably my most enjoyable job in my life was summertime working on the John Hancock building. A professor of mine at college was the gentleman who wrote the famous book, Richard Schultz, on skyscrapers in Chicago.
Okay.
And from there, I had 2 internships in the summertime with sheet metal workers when we were building the air conditioning and heating system on the 98th floor at the top of the Hancock.
Okay.
And when I left my work with the sheet metal workers, I had developed a relationship with the steel workers. And I don't even know if I had the opportunity to meet your father, but when I left, they gave me the cut-off end of the beam from the 70th floor, which I've always retained from back in 1960s. It's probably one of my best bookends ever. So I can tell you that during that construction, I believe 7 construction workers lost their life. It was an extremely difficult job, particularly the steel workers who worked on that building. And it was absolutely a magnificent building. At the time, it was the world's tallest vertical building that had mixed use, residential, office, and retail.
Okay.
And it was a famous building. Skidmore, Owings, Merrill, out of Chicago were the architects. And I salute your dad. It's a great job.
My uncle, but he was just like our dad because he had no kids. So
I salute him.
we had 2 dads.
Yeah.
We're very fortunate. So
Thank you.
thank you.
That's hilarious. Who can say that?
Madam President, I do have one more thing I'd like to mention. I'd like to introduce our newest addition to our police department. His name is Colt, and he's a 1.5-year old Belgian Shepherd Malinois. Is that correct, Chief? Malinois, okay. Whatever. I call them German Shepherds. Okay, and he was brought over here from Holland. He's 1.5 years old, and he's currently receiving 5 weeks of training which will be followed by some additional training right here in-house. And it'll be a training for obedience, tracking, drug detection, and apprehension. And if it all goes as planned, Colt will be patrolling Oaklawn streets with his handler in February for many years of service. And I think it's fair to mention that this dog, when the mayor was elected, she contributed half her salary to the Oaklawn Police Department, which she has done, and half of that dog was purchased with the mayor's salary. So
Don't
thank
say
you,
which
Mayor.
half, don't say which half. Thank you. Any other new business?
No, that's all I
Okay.
have, Madam.
Very good, thank you. Conflict of interest disclosure. Does anyone have a conflict to disclose with any item on today's agenda?
I actually do, Mayor.
Yes, trustee Quinlan.
In regards to the agenda item for Steve Radis, for his new position, his contract, Steve and his wife Noreen have, been friends for many years, so I do have to abstain from that vote.
Okay. Thank you. Any other conflicts to disclose? Trustee Desmond.
On item 18D, I believe I may have. I did receive a donation.
Okay. Is that the adjudication one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Will that preclude me from preventing me from
Well,
voting?
it's not currently, let me start with my portion. And one of the items on today's agenda is village adjudicator. And I'm just going to disclose that in the days before April's election, Mr. Odelson contacted me to say he was writing a letter of endorsement. This was without solicitation on my part. In fact, I only think I met him once before that. I did disclose it to the State Board of Elections, and I want to disclose it tonight as well. We have an ethics policy here. It currently does not cover campaign contributions of this nature, only business relationships. However, I thought it was important to go above and beyond. I don't want anyone to think, that this was not being disclosed. That being said, there's no need to recuse from voting on it, but should it be needed.
Thank you.
Because it's not currently, but if the Ethics Committee would like to put that through, I'd be supportive. Okay. Tim, did you want to continue, or?
No, that answers my
Okay,
question too.
okay.
Thanks.
Were there any other conflicts to disclose with any item on tonight's agenda? Okay, we're going to move on. Item 7 on the agenda is approval of meeting minutes for the regular meeting minutes, 2014-01, dated January 14th, 2014. May I have a motion on item 7?
Motion to approve.
Properly moved by trustee Carberry,
Second.
seconded by trustee Desmond. Any discussion on this item? Please take the roll.
Trustee Quinlan.
Abstain.
Trustee Oliniechek.
Yes.
Trustee Desmond.
Yes.
Trustee Carberry.
Yes.
Trustee Vorder.
Yes.
Trustee Streit. Yes. Motion passes 501.
Thank you. Item 8 on the agenda is a presentation by Village Treasurer Pat O'Donnell, and this is an update on Oaklawn's structural deficit. Mr. O'Donnell, would you care to take the podium?
Me and Brian are both doing this one.
Brian Hannigan as well, our finance director.
My assistant. So I think we're going to have a. All right, click. I'm sorry. There you go. What do I point back there? Okay, so key takeaways from just trying to bring up, we passed the budget on December 10th. Going to talk about just some of the key takeaways and sort of some of the things that have transpired since then. So we talked about at that point the deficit was at 3.4 million, and again echoing one of the citizens talking about it, this is all in the process of trying to put more money toward our pension funds and reduce our debt. So the deficit was at 3.4 million. Now it's at 4.6 million. There's an overrun in terms of some of the 111th costs, which won't allow us to to pay down as much debt as we had hoped to. So that's why it's kind of increased. Brian will talk a little bit more about that in the future. I want to remind everybody that Moody's will do its review again in July of 2014. The last 2 consecutive years, we've been downgraded. The last time we were downgraded, and we also got a negative bias. If we get downgraded once again, we'll also, at that point, get a $200,000. Some of the covenants inside some of our debt will trigger extra payments of about $200,000 at that point. And I'll, again, talk a little bit more about that. So we've talked with some of the trustees and the mayor on trying to figure out how to put our best foot forward and try to, in all cases, try to stop the downgrade. And so we've came up with the need to decrease the deficit by $2.3 million annualized. And we'll, again, I'll talk about all these later. If we have no movement in the fire department by June, then we'll have to look at cutting the last $2.3 million. If we have no movement in terms of the fire department overtime, then we'll look at that. So then if we actually can go through and we can find these either added cuts or increased revenues, we can resubmit a budget before April 30th, hopefully increasing our contributions to both pension funds and or reducing our debt. Going forward, and Brian's going to talk a little bit more about the overall debt in terms of where that's going. So real quick, if you can switch slides. I'll try to make this relatively quick. Go back to one. So this is the slide I've kind of put up a couple different times, talking about like sort of what we did in the last 6 years. I've kind of mentioned these things, so real quick, our expenditures did our revenues by $10 million a year. We increased taxes by 5.8. We increased our debt from 54 to 100 million. We didn't pay our recommended pension contributions. We underpaid it by $4 to $5 million a year. Downgraded by both rating agencies. And the last one, which is really key as well, which is 2010, there was a public safety law put in effect that starts in 2016, which will allow the police and fire pension funds to basically grab our sales tax and put it toward the pension if we're not paying to the 90% level at that point. So kind of coming forward, what did we do in 2013? The deficit went down to $8 million. It's kind of, you're missing a piece of the side there, but
Yeah, Tim, is there a way up to the right, the structural deficit in 2013 was about $8 million. You can't really see it in.
you're cutting off the far right end. I'll keep.
Well, we
Okay.
can just keep talking.
Yep. So anyways, the structural deficit was reduced from $13 million in 12 to $8 million in 2013. Debt was basically break even. We had no new tax increases, but we still deferred the pension contribution by $4.5 million. And as I already said, we got downgraded by Moody's last summer. So 2014, where are we at? Now we've agreed that we are going to sit there and include the pension funding as part of our overall, that's the number we're going to try to go forward and try and be balanced. So if you kind of look at the 3 years from 2012 to 13 to 14, we went from $17.5 million to $12.5 million to now $4.6 million is our deficit. We hope to decrease our debt in 2013. Brian's going to talk more about that. And I talked a little bit about some of the tax and service fee increases we had. We passed through $900K of water costs from Chicago. We increased our sewer revenues by $800K, and we decreased our property taxes by $300K. The 111th TIF there's a bunch of different overages, which is going to preclude our debt pay down. And as I said, Moody's will review us this summer. Next one.
All right, this will be a little hard to follow because the numbers are to the far right. I'm not sure why that's not showing up, Tom. But what I wanted to kind of talk about this, what's the makeup of the structural deficit? We've delayed the Public Works meeting in November. Trustee Olenich is the chairman of that. We had talked about potentially $7 million of various infrastructure needs. We have cut back that number. We're still going to do a number of streets and alleys as we see what happens during the winter months, but we've cut that number back by approximately $1.2 million. The deferred contributions, we still committed a significant increase to our pension funds, but the actuarial number is 1.5 million. So if you look at the makeup of the structural deficit, 1.2 million is related to some delays in streets and alleys. 1.5 is because we've put more money into the pension funds, but not quite the level that the actuary has recommended. Pat and I have, we feel pretty strongly that the village has committed to retiree medical, and that's never been funded at all by the village. We have cut that back to about $200,000, so that's $400,000 of that number. And then sewer infrastructure, Pat just talked about how much we had put through. The water increase is really just a pass-through, pure and simple from what the city of Chicago has done to Oak Lawn and everyone else. So we didn't increase water rates at all. We just passed through the cost of the raw material to residents. On the sewer side, we do have a need for some sewer rehabilitation, and that was the $800,000. The number that we had talked about initially with Public Works was about 1.1 million. So we're going to see how those projects go, and that represents about 300,000, that number. So that number, if you could see it, was the 3.4. And there's an additional 1.2 million that has to do with dealing with some of the overpayments. It's not overpayments, but some of the additional costs for the GeoPier, some other detention needs out at 111th Street. We still think, I'll show you later how we're going to address that, but the reduced debt pay down is another 1.2. So that's the makeup of the 4.6 million. I just wanted to touch base. This budget, going back 10 years, and again, this has nothing to do with this board or the previous board. The fact of the matter is Oak Lawn has balanced its budget based on a deferral of street resurfacing and other infrastructure projects going back as far as 2003, and you can see we did $1.6 million, 1.6 million streets, 2.2, and then you can see what the previous board committed to kind of address the infrastructure needs of the village. In addition, the village has balanced its budget on a deferral of pension contributions. So as I said, when we've had our numerous budget meetings with Pat and with the board, this whole budget is about streets and pensions. And I just wanted to show, going back 10 years, when we talk about 185 miles of paved streets, kind of, the bell-shaped curve of what we've done the last 10 years. Pat will kind of go through kind of our ratings and our concern about
So
that.
if you kind of look, I've kind of had Joanne kind of color code these things. And this is just all the people that are in our water deal, as well as I tried to just pick other communities that were, around us. Not every municipality gets rated, and not every municipality has public debt that gets traded, and that's kind of what determines whether somebody gets rated or not. But this shows you basically the different ratings. In the top three, Naperville, Downers Grove, Olympia Fields, they're all the AAAs. You can sort of see the next level, and it kind of goes down from AA1s or AA pluses if you're looking at Standard & Poor's, and it goes down all the way to the AA minuses. We're currently in the third group with Country Club Hills and Palos Hills. We're at A1 with a negative watch, which means I talked about this earlier, which means we're more likely or not. Both Brian and I agree that it's more probable that where we sit today, we're going to get downgraded again. And again, there is a cost. The cost last time we got downgraded was $25,000. This time it's $190,000 additional. If we were to get downgraded again and then yet again, then two levels.
Two more
Two levels, and then we would go non-investment grade. And at that point, there'd be a heck of a lot more costs.
I think the point here we wanted to make is that this board, and we have done a lot of things. We've bumped up our fund balance, and you'll see those in the 2013 numbers. Obviously, the deficit, Pat talked about it going from 18 million to 8 million to 4.6 this year. All of those are terrifically positive. I think when we talk about it being more likely than not, we don't want to make it a self-fulfilling prophecy either. We think we're going to do a presentation to both agencies that will reflect our new numbers. But we just wanted to point out where Oak Lawn was in the whole scheme of ratings, and that we don't have a lot of room because I don't think that, the last thing I think we want to be is a non-investment grade community. So that was the point of that slide, obviously.
And one thing I'll just reiterate is if you look at, what's the 90% level that you're supposed to do with pensions? It's the 7.2 million
It's
number?
7.2 times 90%, so 6.5 million.
Okay, 6.5 million. And currently, even where we kind of sort of budgeted for the pensions, it's at 2.3 times 2, which is 4.6. And so there's a bunch of the gaps. So if we can sort of, further cut costs or get other revenues, either one's just as good, we could sit there and apply that extra money to either the pensions or reducing our debt. As I said, starting in 2016, we'll lose a little bit of the flexibility where the unions will start pushing that, it could start taking that and moving it into the pension funds if we're not at that 90% level.
Real quick, and I'll run through this. We're almost, and I know there's a lot more exciting things to be done tonight than go through our finances. But the debt summary, which again it's hard to see, but basically we talked about this at one of the meetings in December. Our debt is basically around $95 million. 2013's debt, the pay down will be about flat, and that's kind of where we'll be at the end of 2014. The way to think of the village's debt, and we want to aggressively pay down as much debt as we can in anticipation of the state law that's going to hit the village and other municipalities in 2016. So we want to be prepared for that by taking down our debt balance, which decreases the risk in the village. When you look at our debt, you need to think of it in sort of different pockets of funds. The biggest one being the Regional Water Fund, which this board is committed to a $175 million project, of which our share of that is 10%. So again, you can't see the numbers there, but just if you look at in ballpark terms, there's about $122 million of debt at the end of 2014. Approximately $90 million of that is what you would call village debt, and that's what we want to focus on paying down over the next 3 to 4 months. Real quick, if you look at a pie-shaped chart, these are kind of the buckets. Real quick, 111th Street is that pie shape that's kind of a brown, 24%, 33%. That maroon-shaped pie is the Build America debt that was used to kind of address a lot of the infrastructure needs that the village has had, or that were deferred over from that previous slide. And the pie up in the upper right corner for 19%, that's the debt that we think we can pay down over the next coming months, year and a half, to kind of decrease the level of risk in the village to deal with the pension obligations. Again, you can kind of see it there. It has the total VOL debt of $89 million, total debt's $138 million. Again, the water debt, the village had a history of issuing general obligation bonds for all of its debt, including the water side of the village. That's been changed over the last year to the focus with both Larry and our whole team, Jack Gallagher, Joanne, and a number of us. I don't want to leave anyone out. Ken Ritter. We've all been focused on a lot of on the master water agreements with these outside communities, and that regional water debt is all going to be revenue bonds, which means everyone shares in their share of it. So it's not a general obligation bond of the village. And as I said, our share of that is 10%, which is in that $89 million. So to use the numbers that Pat just talked about, we had about $100 million at the end of 2012. That number will be about $95 million at the end of 13 and about $90 million at the end of 14. So again, we're going to try to pay down debt faster than that, which again will set us up for a less risky municipality. This is just the same pie showing the breakdown. Again, this is after the pay down, showing the percentages. Pat, do you want to talk to the pension fund real quick? I think we wanted to point out, this is a snapshot of where our pension funds ended up during 2013. And
So there was a couple people that said, are we taking into account that there's been a great bull market? And I don't think everyone quite understood quite how the pension dynamics work. So I thought this would be one good time to just sort of work through it. Unfortunately, you only can see the fire. The police are for some reason we're having a technical difficulty and you can't see all the way to the right-hand side. But the fire is very indicative. The funds are very, very the same. So this is good enough. The beginning asset value was 71 million. That's how much assets we started the year at. The employer contributions, the city made